I'm on Wonderland and coming to you from lockdown lounge room where I've been doing all my budget coverage today. Thanks, Don, for linking to our report, which we finished at about 2:30 last night or this morning. Yeah, I think, well, let's cast our mind back to how government has talked about this budget. They recognise it is the most important budget since the Second World War. Because they're trying to, well, rightfully make comparisons with the scale of unemployment and, you know, the scale of public investment that was needed to get the ball rolling again. And what they gave us was a budget that resembled none of the budgets that came in the post-war period of Reconstruction. I would sort of characterise it by low-funded announceables, particularly sort of hat tips to manufacturing and to infrastructure. What's commonly not discussed is the 1.5 billion for manufacturing is a drop in the ocean. It's half of 1% of its total output. Can't be said to be an actual manufacturing strategy of any sort. And the infrastructure spend is actually only a marginal increase on existing infrastructure spending. So that's the two industries that they really branded their industry jobs plans around. But the bulk of it is really trying to sell to the public this concept of the business-led recovery. And they were paving the way up to this budget in many ways. And they've sort of tried to, you know, candy it with little announceables to make it look like a more social, pro-social kind of budget. But it is billions and billions of dollars being handed to existing powerful interests that speak loudest to government, in particular mining resources, the big retailers, and you know, finance. And I think that's what Tony's getting at when he says, you know, we had an opportunity to invest in, just to say, Don, the typing's coming through on your microphone.
Oh, gee. Sorry.
Don't worry, all good. And yeah, instead what we got was blatant expenditures of billions of dollars. Even the youth wage subsidy is quite clearly a handout to low-wage employers. So they're at pains to link this business-led recovery with the jobs framing. This whole budget was supposed to be about jobs, but all of the same policies they prescribed in that led us to a very weak economy coming into this crisis, where business investment had actually declined by over a third. And that's something that government doesn't want to talk about, because what was happening when business was not investing is that profits were increasing. So business was getting more and doing less with the money. And we're just seeing a total ramp up, you know, that growing inequality between labor's share and capital share, just, you know, it's on steroids now at this point. So the idea that just what government wants to convince us is that by giving billions of dollars to businesses through things like 99% tax investment, capital investment write-offs, or, you know, great subsidies, will actually generate jobs. Of course it won't, because giving more money to powerful interests does not necessarily mean they invest that money. We already know that. So one of the centerpieces as well of the whole budget was tax cuts. And this is something that people would have followed in the media in the lead up to the budget. It was legislated before the budget, and they wanted to convince us that it was about putting more money into the pockets of, you know, of Australian people, the money we earned. They actually they were really dodgy with the figures and how they equated that overall tax benefit. You end up adding like up to $1,000 to the average earner to what you actually get based on the years they assessed. It was super dodgy. I've got to look into that. But what that tax cut will do is basically deliver, because it mostly benefits higher income earners. The Australia Institute has equated that 90% of the value of the stage 2 income tax cuts will go to the top 20% of income earners. The bottom half of income earners, and that's why we're here to talk about the impact of the budget on low income people. So the bottom half of all Australian income earners get 4% of the benefit of that tax cut. So this is absolutely about trying to convince us that by making rich people richer, we're all going to be better off. And it's not going to be news to you guys that that's not the way it works. The other big impact of the tax cut, as well as increasing inequality between people's income groups, it's going to be a massive accelerator of gender income inequality. I think the benefit between men and women is something like $2 to 1 to women. So the other thing, the budget was framed as a game changer for youth who have been locked out of good, secure jobs for some time, and for women who have borne the brunt of loss of jobs and incomes because they were more likely to be in sectors that were, well, both groups were most likely to be in sectors that were shut down at the start of the crisis. They were customer facing. They were more likely to lose hours. In the case of women, they scaled back their hours because there was an explosion in the caring burden and, caring for children with homeschooling or with elderly people. And there's proof that in that explosion of the caring burden, women have increased their hours in the home, regardless of the jobs they do, for caring for children as well as household tasks compared to men. And of course, the biggest crime here is that free childcare was dangled in front of working families and then ripped out from underneath people. And that very clearly locked out women from being able to get back into jobs. So that's the biggest crime that hasn't been fixed in this budget. There's nothing there for childcare and nothing there to help people with a high cost of childcare. For youth, they have to look forward to this great wage subsidy program, but it's called the Job Maker program. So it's making jobs, but actually it's not a fitting title because they've pegged 450,000 jobs, new jobs on this program, and there is no evidence that it's actually going to create new jobs. And the reason why is this wage subsidy, it provides employers who take on unemployed young people who are on the job seeker payment, and it pays them $200 per week if they take an unemployed job seeker who's between 16 and 30 years old, and 30 to 35-year-old unemployed young job seekers the employers will get $100 a week. The requirement is that they perform 20 hours of work to receive that subsidy. And the critical part of this program, which shows you exactly what government has planned for vulnerable young workers and for workers everywhere, really, because this is the impact, is that the program runs for 12 months. So what's going to happen, and my fear is that this is going to create a churn model of 450,000 young people being churned through low skill, low wage, insecure jobs. And it's going to be used by employers because they will now have an incentive to sack existing employees who are perhaps older and more expensive. Perhaps they are unionized, perhaps they have better working conditions. So there are many, many risks there for organization. The other major jobs program they've introduced is under the job trainer. It's all about the branding. Also, I think it's a furphy. They say 100,000 apprenticeships are going to be created. They're going to do that through a 50% wage subsidy. But the question remains, for anyone who has any idea what's going on in the vocational education sector, is it's totally decimated. TAFE has been smashed. TAFE is the major provider of apprentices. The question remains, where are those 100,000 apprentices going to do their training? Because there aren't the facilities to provide it. The private vocational providers think it's too expensive to do it. Maybe there'll be a whole new range of subsidies for them, possibly. The other question is, what kind of work are they going to do? Because government hasn't invested in long-term sustained projects that will provide the investment terrain for employers to say, hey, it's worth taking on that extra apprentice and training them up for the next 3 or 4 years. So as well as the lack of any decent investments in the healthcare system, education system, any of the social infrastructure, childcare, like there are so many spaces we could have been investing in jobs. Government hasn't done that. So I don't think the 100,000 apprentices is going to ring true. The next big question is one of women, because government raised all this fanfare by saying we recognise women have been shafted in this crisis. We're going to introduce this or reintroduce the Women's Economic Security Statement. And it can be best described as, well, first I'll tell you, it's $240 million over 5 years. And the aim is to get all women back into the workplace. They're not going to do anything with that kind of money and it's shown by the way they've divvied it out. It's a few dollars for women's leadership programs and a few dollars for some entrepreneurial women's programs. Some programs to get women into male-dominated professions, because what they really need to do is put a hard hat on and get into the bloke, heavy industries, and that's how they're going to get back into work. And 500 STEM positions for women, which is the closest thing to a job creation program. It's going to miss the mark. Women are going to be locked out of paid work for some time unless we have like a serious push, and that has to be integrated into all the work that we do. And probably, I'm not sure how I'm going for time, Don, but I guess I would say, because maybe this will come out more in discussion, as from my economist...
5 minutes, Ali.
No worries. With my economist hat on, what I'm looking at with the spending that government is actually tangibly putting in, that is not just big numbers attached to tax concessions or asset write-offs. Looking at what the budget hasn't done, as well as the scale of the cuts of the JobKeeper and the Job Seeker program that have already been made of many billions of dollars. And because they've failed to restore those programs, the combination of these factors, I think, means that there's going to be not enough demand for jobs. Partly why that 450,000 job maker program is much more likely to be displacing existing workers and not creating new jobs. There won't be enough demand for new jobs, and definitely not in the private sector. And so we're going to have high unemployment so long as we accept the government's story, which is it's just a story that only the private sector and only private businesses can lead recovery. It is absolute fantasy. The elephant in the room, and the one that we should always be pointing out, and is our route out of this crisis, is to say governments, both Commonwealth and state level governments, have all the power to fix this now. They have all the power to directly hire people and expand public employment. And it wouldn't be about digging holes, because we know that our services are in desperate need of resources. Our education system is in desperate need of training up people to get into those services. We only have to look at the aged care system, but we're in the middle of a pandemic. Medicare has to be expanded. Education has to be expanded. Childcare, we need free public childcare. Employment services has to be completely reformed, put back into public hands. There's no shortage of things that have to be done. We know this. And what government has shown us in this budget is that we're expected to sit around in destitution and high levels of unemployment and wait until this supposed private sector recovery. If we learn anything in the Depression, is that we can have 10 years of this story and it doesn't eventuate to anything until we fight to create the kind of public-led reconstruction, mass democratic movement we need to turn it around.